There we go. So I'd like to call this meeting of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors to order. Many of our legislators are here. I think we have 5 of our 6 senators and representatives, and we very, very much appreciate you being here. And I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors. And after the call to order, Pledge of Allegiance is our.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And if the clerk would call the roll.
Supervisor Johnson.
Here.
Supervisor Pat Breslin.
Here.
Supervisor Headland.
Here.
Supervisor Score.
Here.
Supervisor Steen.
Here.
Supervisor Zons.
Present.
Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Here.
Supervisor Wilsey.
Here.
Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Rogers.
Here.
Supervisor Witzel.
Here.
Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Barrier. Supervisor Calabrese.
Here.
Supervisor Keeter.
Here.
Supervisor Vogel.
Here.
Supervisor Sean Breslin.
Here.
Supervisor Vandermeulen.
Here.
Supervisor Robinson. Supervisor Morehouse. Supervisor Hagan. Supervisor Thomas.
Here.
Supervisor Prochnow.
Here.
Supervisor Gilbert. Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Here.
Supervisor Bauer. Supervisor Leno.
Here.
Supervisor Hartung. Chair McCullough.
Thank you. Introduction of state legislators. Chris, do you want to do the honors?
So appearing with us on Zoom tonight is Senator Smith. And then in our center here, we have Representative Moses, hometown boy. I don't know if that's the way to say that politically correct, but hometown boy. And then Senator Stafschold and Representative Summerfield. And I understand that Senator James is on his way.
Yes. All right. So I think we'll go with the presentation of our various pieces and then invite you to have a word with us.
So I'm Chris Corpola. I'm the Dunn County Manager, and I would welcome you this evening and thank you very, very much for taking time out of your very busy schedules to be here with us. I think that you'll find the evening informative, and we are going to try to get through it fairly quickly, and then we will give you an opportunity at the end both to ask questions or make a comment, and then kind of comment on anything that has been discussed that you would like to speak to. Got to give you some bang for your buck for coming. So we are going to go through a series of 7 presenters this evening. The department heads and the departments that constitute the various standing committees have identified for their standing committees legislative agenda items. Those have been compiled into the document that I gave you that was subsequently approved by the Dunn County Board and will become our 2023 legislative agenda. And then each of the department heads also wrote some summary information that will be read by the chairs of their various standing committees. So we will begin this evening with our chair from the Judiciary and Law Committee, John Calabrese.
Thank you to the county manager. Put my old man glasses on. Thank you to Representative Moses and Summerfield for being here, Senator Stafschold, Senator Smith online. It's good to see you. Thank you. The first item from the Judiciary and Law Committee is supporting an increase in pay for assistant district attorneys. Assistant district attorneys serve as the backbone of the state of Wisconsin's ability to prosecute cases in all of its 72 counties. Any shortage of these assistant district attorneys creates backups in the justice system, which can lengthen cases, create more pressure on existing staff, and delay or deny justice to victims and defendants. The entry-level compensation rate for assistant district attorneys in Wisconsin in 2022 was $26.70 per hour, or approximately $55,536. This entry-level rate has not kept up with inflation and sits well below the national average for similar positions in district attorneys' offices across the country, as well as public sector attorney positions. The rate is not competitive in today's workforce environment. It accelerates staffing turnover in district attorneys' offices around the state of Wisconsin, and it endangers public safety. We urge the state of Wisconsin to revise and maintain an entry-level compensation rate for assistant district attorneys that is competitive with similar positions in district attorneys' offices around the country, other public sector attorney positions, and comparable private sector positions, and to keep up with the rate of inflation. The Dunn County District Attorney's Office has 5 prosecutors, including the elected district attorney position, that cover all criminal, traffic, juvenile, children in need of protection and services, termination of parental rights, and DNR cases in Dunn County. The district attorney's office has seen a significant increase in the overall number of cases in recent years, as well as an increase in complex felony cases that require large amounts of prosecutor time and resources. These types of cases include sexual assault of both adults and children, drug distribution with a strong concentration on methamphetamine, battery, homicide, cyber-related crimes, CHIPS, and TPR cases. Welcome, Senator James. Despite these increases, compensation for assistant district attorneys remains well below the national average. An adequately staffed district attorney's office is critical for effective prosecution in Dunn County. Increased compensation for assistant district attorneys is necessary to ensure that Dunn County is able to recruit and retain talented prosecutors. Failure to provide adequate compensation directly threatens this county's commitment to safety. The next item from the Judiciary and Law Committee is an increase in child support funding. We are seeking your support to approve a $5 million increase in general purpose revenue, GPR, for county child support agencies in each fiscal year for the 23-25 Wisconsin state budget. For every $1 in state GPR invested in the child support program, roughly $2 in federal matching funds are generated. This great return on the state's investment will result in approximately $9.7 million in additional federal funding for Wisconsin's child support program annually. Wisconsin has 71 county child support agencies. Menominee, MENOMINEE, has a tribal program that collected $906 million in financial support for families in 2021. Of this amount, $5.4 million was collected by the Dunn County Agency, which is considered a medium-sized county with approximately 1,850 full-service cases. The Dunn County Agency employs 7 full-time staff, 4 of whom are case managers, each with a caseload size of around 465. County child support agencies provide services to the community, including genetic testing and paternity adjudication, the establishment and enforcement of support orders, securing health insurance for children otherwise on Badger Care, and promoting parental success by referring case participants to other community partners, like workforce resource, to meet their job, training, or placement needs. Wisconsin's county child support agencies currently receive $10.7 million per year in state GPR funding. While small increases in GPR were received in each of the last 2 budget cycles, agencies have yet to fully recover from the 2019 loss in federal match funding towards birth cost recovery of approximately $4.2 million. Additionally, state policy has changed to limit the county's ability to recover birth costs from intact families, which has further reduced funding to the agencies. State support is needed to help county agencies recover from the previous loss of federal match funding, and also to meet the growing challenges related to the recruitment and retention of staff, the increased complexity of cases, and new program mandates like e-filing. As other states have increased funding to their child support programs, they have started to outperform us. Wisconsin has been falling in national rankings, and this has resulted in less federal performance funding too. For instance, Wisconsin fell from second in the nation for current support collected in 2016 to sixth overall in 2021. Increased program funding will allow county child support agencies to retain and train their staff, because a loss in staffing only leads to increased caseload sizes, further diminishing performance and directly impacting the children and families relying on child support for economic security. The Dunn County Board of Supervisors passed a resolution in October 2022 in support of the Wisconsin Child Support Enforcement Association's ask to increase county child support program funding by $5 million per year in the 23-25 state budget. Besides Dunn County, an additional 26 county resolutions have passed to date. This funding ask is also supported by the Wisconsin Counties Association. We would appreciate your support and ask you to reach out to members of Joint Finance to advise them of your support of this very important funding ask for the Wisconsin Child Support Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Calabrese.
All right. Oh, next we have Supervisor Quinn, who just walked in the door. Let's give him a moment to get settled. Supervisor Morehouse, would you wish to step up, and we'll let Supervisor Quinn get settled.
I am happy to pitch it for my colleague, Supervisor Quinn. Good evening. I'm Diane Morehouse. I am the chair of the Health and Human Services Board. Good evening, Senators Staff Schultz, James Smith, and Representative Moses. Thank you for being here. The Health and Human Services Board oversees the Human Services Department, the Department of Public Health, and Veterans Services. Those departments have a huge portfolio of services. Therefore, our portfolio of legislative requests is fairly long. I have abbreviated somewhat in deference to your time tonight. The role of county human service agencies is to care for the most vulnerable people in the community without causing further harm or trauma. Over time, through research and data, we have learned that when we remove people from their homes, it adds to the trauma they may already experience due to the issues that brought them to human services doors. Thus, the department works hard to embrace the philosophy and work ethic of keeping children and youth in their own home whenever safe to do so. Counties are responsible for child welfare services. The services offered focus on keeping children and families safely together whenever possible. Each county receives an allocation from the state to assist in the cost of the services. This allocation, even though it has been increased somewhat, did not keep up with the increase in costs to the program. We request a $20 million overall statewide or 20% increase allocated to counties. In the area of family and children, there are multiple programs that work towards the goal of supporting children and families within their natural environment. The Birth to 3 program focuses on teaching parents and caregivers the skills needed to support children with disabilities. This program is an entitlement program for families. Thus, the county is unable to cap the number of families served. We request that the state provide an additional $4 million increase to counties to assist in the cost of these essential services provided to families. Counties certified in the crisis, all caps, CRISIS, intervention program need to be fully reimbursed for the cost of providing intervention services. The crisis intervention program provides services in the least restrictive environment appropriate for the individual's needs, which includes keeping people out of the emergency room and hospitals if possible. Not only is that the least invasive measure, it reduces trauma by keeping people in their community, again, when it is safe to do so. It also reduces Medicaid costs when hospitalization is not incurred and billed. And finally, in the human services area, the Aging and Disability Resource Centers, ADRCs, are the first stop for adults with disabilities and older persons. Due to the growing population of elderly and persons with disabilities, we request that the state provide a $32 million increase to reduce significant historical inequities in funding, to keep pace with expanding needs, and to allow full funding of mandated services. On public health, 2 issues to highlight. Preserve the statutory authority of public health agencies for control of communicable diseases and other health threats. Wisconsin statute assigns duties and authority to local health officers to prevent and control communicable disease outbreaks. As an evidence-based strategy, it is important that this authority be maintained to prevent the transmission of both known severe diseases like tuberculosis and measles, as well as unknown emerging threats. Second, advocate for expanded funding for county public health department staffing for communicable disease investigations. Local health officers who are highly trained and educated public servants, typically with advanced degrees, are charged with keeping their communities safe and healthy. We support an increase of $36 million for the infrastructure and staffing to support this communicable disease investigation and mitigation. And 2 items from our Veterans Services Office. We ask that you support an inflationary increase in County Veterans Services Officer, CVSO is the acronym, grant funds to mitigate static funding. The Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs approved a nominal increase of the CVSO grant in FY 2022. This amounted to a $1,000 increase. That's appreciated, but does not keep up with the cost of outreach, training, transportation, homelessness prevention, and other relief efforts for the veterans of Dunn County. And finally, we ask your support for a piece of federal legislation. We don't typically do this in our legislative agenda, but there has never historically been federal funding to support Veterans Services offices. The Commitment to Veterans Support and Outreach Act to support community-based outreach programs that help veterans learn about and access their earned benefits passed the House of Representatives, the U.S. House of Representatives, on December 1st, 2022. The act was received and read at the Senate on December 5th, 2022. The bipartisan support is provided by Senator Baldwin from Wisconsin and Senator Sullivan from Arkansas. The Dunn County Veterans Services Office requests support for the federal legislation as it will directly support our local veterans. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Supervisor Morehouse. Supervisor Quinn, are you ready? All right. Next, we have Supervisor Tom Quinn. He is the Chair of the Planning Resources and Development Committee, and he will be commenting on their legislative agenda items.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Christine. Yes, I'm chair of the Planning Resource Development Committee. Also, that role also involves being chair of the Land and Water Conservation Committee. So if you notice in your packet, we also have a long list of topics which we are unable to prioritize in any way. So but I won't go through them all tonight. I'll try and pick and choose from a few that we would like to maybe point out some important topics we're on. So the list that I'll go through is starting with number B, request full funding for local land conservation staffing according to the formula contained in chapter 92.1466B of Wisconsin statutes. And this has been something we've noted, I think, for the past 4 years. A key priority in our county land conservation programs is maintaining a strong and stable level of professional staff. Quality of our staff and their ability to provide direct services is the engine that fosters farmer participation and community support for all of our programs. Full state funding for local land conservation staffing would provide $18.7 million in stable core funding for county conservation department staffing from the DATCAP soil and water resource budget. We appreciate that the state has provided an increase in this base funding for several budgets. We urge you to support increasing this funding to the full level provided for in state statutes. County conservation efforts are one of our state's best success stories. It ensures that professional quality-based staff can provide planning and hands-on implementation assistance to local farmers, watershed groups, and communities, and also provide a direct connection with state and federal assistance programs. This connection will be especially important in the next few years as new conservation and climate programs come online and dramatically increase funding availability. For example, new federal initiatives will provide increased funding for innovative conservation and climate-friendly practices within federal NRCS programs. Some estimates are $3 billion in new funding over the next 5 years. These programs will be inviting partnerships with county land and water conservation programs to help deliver services and provide technical assistance. This historic opportunity to gain access to these new conservation programs and income sources potentially offer our farmers will depend heavily on the professional support provided by county land conservation staff. We will need support for this if we're going to take advantage of it. It's a historical opportunity, and we need conservation staff to be in place to do it. I'd move down to item E, establishment of a statewide groundwater quality program that provides annual funding and technical support to county groundwater testing and assessment programs. The adoption of Act 223 in last session, I think, directed the creation of one full-time hydrogeologist position, which will expire on June 30, 2020. This position will focus on developing groundwater resource inventory at the local level and assist in the interpretation of this information. Support for this position and the associated services is encouraged by the legislature beyond the 2025 expiration date. Our county over the past year has been able to allocate one-time funding commitment toward developing a groundwater testing initiative that will establish a baseline of water quality conditions across the county. This one-time effort will provide a first step, but ongoing testing will be required to monitor results over time and allow us to develop an understanding of both the potential problems we may have with groundwater and the practical steps we can take to address these problems. In the initial offer of water testing, which will start this spring, just the initial offer with very little fundraising, we've already had 800 residents step forward and volunteer to participate. We expect that will grow quite a bit. So we'll have a very good baseline, but we need an ongoing program from the state to help fund continual monitoring efforts. This program should identify dedicated sources of funding and could include some matching funds requirement from participating counties. Two more. Item E, the Register of Deeds office is also part of our committee purview. And we have a resolution that deals with their services. We ask for support for counties to retain a larger portion of the real estate transfer fee. Recommend that 50% of the fee retained for local counties. I'd note that this item is also included in the 2024 Counties Association agenda. Background: the collection of real estate transfer fees by the County Register of Deeds was mandated by the state of Wisconsin in 1969. State statutes have twice established the fee rate and the formula for division of the fee between the state and the county. In 1969, the fee rate was established at $1 per $1,000 of real estate value, split 50-50 between the county and the state. In 1981, that was changed to $3 per thousand of real estate, split 80-20 between the county and the state. That 1981 change resulted in a large transfer of revenue from the county to the state Department of Revenue. In 2022, Dunn County's transfer tax collected totaled $894,756. 80% of this, or $715,805, went back to the state, and $20,178,950 stayed with the county. A return to the original 50-50 split in 22 would have provided Dunn County with $447,378 of much needed funding for local services and programs to directly serve our citizens. In the past 5 years, Dunn County has lost $1,181,000 in revenue under the current 80-20 formula. Any increase in the division of fees above the 20% now required by SS 77.24 would result in more money staying with the county to fund essential services. Any increase in the division of fees would not incur any additional cost to the public or our business partners during the real estate recording process. Any increase in the division of fees above 20% would directly result in an increased support for our local constituents, county programs, and essential services at a time when county budgets are increasingly strained. And again, we're pointing out, we're not asking for an increase in the fee, just a different allocation of the fee to allow the local county to retain more of the funding. And the last item came up fairly recently. Over the past 6 months, the county has managed, we're recommending that the state consider revising Chapter 33 of the Wisconsin statutes to allow local lake districts to provide for absentee voting as a part of the annual meeting or special meeting of the Lake District. Over the past 6 months, the county has managed the process of approving the establishment of the Tainter Lake Rehabilitation District. This process and the public comments received has brought rise to concerns about those impacted by district activities and potential assessments. Many citizens have questioned the state requirements that permit only in-person voting at district annual meetings that approve projects and establish taxation levels. There is concern that residents who are unable to attend or voice their concerns and vote on district activities by proxy or absentee ballot. Current statutes require that district members be present at the annual meeting of the district to have a voice in district projects or tax assessments. Our committee urges the legislature to review this situation and explore options that could address the rights of district residents to use proxy or absentee ballots, or perhaps providing districts that choose the authority to establish absentee ballots for the district. With that, that's my summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Quinn. And with that, we will move on to we have a skilled nursing facility, the Neighbors of Dunn County. And Supervisor Kinnear is the chair to the NDC Standing Committee, and he is going to offer some comments on their legislative agenda proposals.
Thank you, Chris. It's nice to see you here. Appreciate it. And as she said, I'll be speaking about the neighbors of Dunn County. Our county-owned nursing facility, one of 36 in our state. Thanks for taking time out to actually be here, especially on a night like tonight. Could change. We want to thank everybody also that's not here that has helped us in the past, because even in the difficult times we've been having, we have made some headway. Our hope now is to continue this momentum. We're very grateful for the steps that have been made in a positive direction, supporting nursing home. But our facilities are still in need of continued support. The following 3 requests are an effort to keep nursing facilities both sustainable and able to provide quality health care to those in our communities that need our services. Of the 3, our first 2 requests are longer term and related to the general workforce shortage in the state. Even before the current shortage, healthcare, especially long-term healthcare, has been struggling to find workers. Since the pandemic, it's really become a crisis. There's simply not enough nursing assistants and nurses to care for our rapidly growing, aging population. So our first request is to increase funding for nursing and certified nursing assistant programs at Wisconsin colleges, technical colleges, and facilities. Increased funding and resources for nursing and CNA educational programs could and probably would help increase the number of CNAs and nurses. And supporting local educational institutions to help foster the development of healthcare professionals is extremely important. If they learn something in a place, they might stay there, and we would love to see that here. So we are advocating that this support increase and branch out to other related institutions as well. And this leads me to the second request, also long-term. We would advocate for the expansion of nursing programs to more of the UW state universities. Currently, only 6 of the 13 UW system universities offer nursing as a major. Every year, the nursing programs have long waiting lists. This discourages many students from entering the field of nursing. We lose people every year who may have become RNs or other healthcare professionals, probably lose them permanently, never go back. Increasing funding to have additional programs in the Wisconsin university system would help to keep more students on the path to become healthcare workers. Our last request is more immediate and more urgent, made more urgent by the worker shortage and the increasing percentage of nursing home residents that are relying on Medicaid. It is our last ask, but most important for us right now. We ask that you support a regular, sustainable increase to the Medicaid reimbursement rates. We're requesting that the increases to these reimbursement rates continue to occur on a regular, sustainable basis. This will help support the increased cost incurred by all skilled nursing facilities as they care for the long-term care residents of our state. And the increases that have been made over the last few years are really appreciated, and it has helped. The hope is that these increases were a start and will continue on a regular basis to keep our nursing facilities sustainable. Previous to those recent increases, Wisconsin was at a desperate breaking point in regards to the Medicaid rates. Regular, sustainable rate increases would prevent Wisconsin from being in that situation again. Medicaid increases would aid in the ability of facilities to pay competitive wages to healthcare workers. An example of the changing needs comes from the neighbors' soaring costs of pool staff. Pool staff sometimes called traveling nurses or traveling CNAs. For pool CNAs and nurses at the neighbors, there was almost a 300% increase in costs from 22 to 2021. I just stop and just think about that. That's a huge number. This is caused by need. We need the people, and by skyrocketing pool costs. They can charge more, so they do. Nearly 300%. Without adequate funding to pay a competitive wage to train workers, as in the first couple of asks across the state, the skilled nursing facilities are having to make difficult decisions regarding admitting residents even, or even staying open. This is not only causing additional long-term care financial hardships, but also increasing the strain on hospitals when the long-term care can't take the people from the hospitals and our health system as a whole. So I'll wrap it up and, you know, being an old teacher, I got to say, and I'm going to summarize it again. Please consider increasing funding for RN and CNA programs across the state. Consider expanding the nursing programs to more of our state universities. And critically for us, we ask for a regular sustainable increase to the Medicaid reimbursement rates. I want to thank you for your time sitting here listening to all of us. And thanks for the efforts that you've already done and worked on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Kinnear. And now we will hear from Supervisor Jim Zons, who will speak to, she's coming forward from the Community Resources and Tourism Standing Committee.
Thank you. I appreciate those of you here in person and via Zoom. I appreciate the time that you're giving our legislative agenda. My name is Jim Zons, and I'm chair of the Community Resources and Tourism Committee. And we have a couple of items on tonight's legislative agenda that are pretty much key focus of our committee. The first item is Dunn County supports the allocation of state funds to help encourage and develop rural and agriculture tourism in Dunn County. Dunn County is uniquely positioned to be a leader in rural and agricultural tourism in the state of Wisconsin. Not only do we have a number of family farms that offer tours and family events, but we also have unique rural museums, attractions, farmers markets, apple orchards, wineries, farm-based bed and breakfast inns, wedding barns, and a whole lot more. And they're all easily accessible to visitors to our west and east via I-94 and to our north and south by Highway 25. Now, this kind of presents a golden opportunity to not only promote rural and agriculture tourism here in Dunn County, but also economic development opportunities as well. So we're encouraging that the legislature support rural and agriculture tourism in current and future budget discussions. It's a smart investment in our rural economy. One of the other items on Dunn County's legislative agenda that our committee oversees is continued support for increased funding for rural broadband expansion. In 2022, the State of Wisconsin Public Service Commission awarded 71 grants for a total of $125 million for broadband expansion across the state. Yet, Dunn County, one of the more rural counties in the state, only received 2 of those grants last year. Also last year, President Biden signed into law the bipartisan infrastructure law, which included a little over $42 billion for the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, or BEAD program, which also awards grants to expand broadband internet nationwide. Now, Wisconsin could receive up to $1.2 billion for expanding high-speed internet through the BEAD program. It's our hope here in Dunn County that our legislative representatives in Madison, you folks here, and Jeff on the screen, can not only continue supporting investment in broadband grants currently being distributed by the PSC, but also work hand in hand with Governor Evers to see that these additional funds as part of the BEAD process can be used to enhance broadband expansion here in Dunn County. Affordability is a core component of the Internet for All initiative here in Wisconsin, and continuing the broadband grant expansion program will help ensure broadband continues to expand and remains affordable for the citizens of Dunn County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Zons. Now we will hear from Supervisor Steen, who's going to speak to you on some financial matters.
Thank you, County Manager. My name is Gary Steen. I'm Vice Chair of Dunn County Board. And I get the rare opportunity to talk to some you folks about something you probably haven't heard much about. And that would be levy limits. Now, if your eyes weren't glazed over before, they will be when I get done here, but this is an important issue. Under current law, Wisconsin counties are subject to the most restrictive state imposed property tax controls levy limits in the nation, limiting the increase in local property taxes from one year to the next to the amount of net new construction. Over the last 10 years, Dunn County's net new construction has averaged just 1.3%. Meanwhile, inflation rate has averaged 2.5% over the same time period, reaching a recent high in 2022 of 8.6%. As a result, Dunn County has been forced to absorb inflationary increases in normal operating expenditures with no offsetting increase in revenue. Since 2012, only 62 of 600 cities and villages in Wisconsin have experienced new construction averaging at least 2% a year. By almost any measure, the cost of providing local services has increased faster than local government revenues. Unable to fund rising services costs with property taxes or state aids, local governments have resorted to new approaches. This is including depleting reserve accounts and additional borrowing. While both approaches are short-term band-aids that are unsustainable long-term, we have had few other options. Moreover, the state levy limit policy has created a dynamic in which fast-growing local governments have the financial resources to invest in services and infrastructure that help them to further increase their growth while slow growth communities stagnate. The fundamental flaw in levy limit is the assumption that the net new construction will keep pace or outstrip the increasing costs of goods and services. This has not happened, and counties, including Dunn, are now unable to sustain those services and programs at the levels dictated by actual need. The law also impedes the county's ability to respond to new problems and trends. Simply stated, Dunn County cannot decide to do more of something without doing less of something else. Expenses such as out-of-home placement costs for children and adults are unpredictable and can quickly force a county to dip into its fund balance, lay off staff, or reduce service in other areas. Dunn County has several proposals for addressing issues related to levy limits. The first would be a modification of the levy limit law to include exemptions for the cost of services or programs mandated by state law but not fully funded with state appropriations and required county appropriations. The second recommendation would be to allow counties to increase the levy over the amount levied the prior year by net new construction plus the Consumer Price Index, CPI, for the region in which the county is located. If the net new construction was zero, then the allowable levy increase would equal CPI for the region. And finally, in lieu of making changes to the levy limit law, Dunn County would request that counties be able to impose up to a 1% sales tax. Dunn County's proposal are a reasonable response to the reality of funding government services. The need to change the levy limit law should not be regarded as a partisan issue, but as what it is, it's a people issue. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your hard work down there. And I know as county board members and legislative members, to find the right answer is tough. To find the money to operate this state and these counties is tough, but we're all good servants and we're tasked with doing the best we can. We'd appreciate any help we can get. Thank you very much.
All right. And finally, you get to hear from me on behalf of the Highway Committee this evening. So Wisconsin's state funding for transportation needs comes largely from two sources: fuel tax, motor fuel taxes, and registration fees. Since 2006, Wisconsin's excise tax on motor vehicle fuel, diesel, and gasoline has been a flat 30.9 cents per gallon. Inflation has taken its toll and the fuel tax revenue is stagnating, even as vehicle miles traveled increase and the state's population and transportation needs grow. It's increasingly urgent as a result that policymakers implement new alternatives. Transportation projects in Wisconsin funded by per gallon fuel taxes that are not sustainable given increased fuel economy and the move toward electric and hybrid vehicles. For more than a decade, Wisconsin's transportation planners have acknowledged the challenge the state faces in transportation funding due to the growing gap between transportation needs and stagnating fuel tax receipts. Continued declines in fuel tax revenues can be expected. Not only did the pandemic result in an immediate decline in fuel consumption as offices closed, but it's also produced a work from home trend likely to continue post-pandemic. How will Wisconsin make up for the cumulative effect of increased fuel efficiency, the elimination of petroleum as a source of fuel, the decline in work trips, and the consequent decline in fuel tax revenues? The state has grappled with this imminent funding change. In December of 2021, the Wisconsin DOT released a final version of Connect 2050 and reiterated the goal to pursue sustainable long-term transportation funding. The study offered 3 new funding options: a mile-based motor vehicle registration use fee, a highway use fee on new vehicles registered in the state, and tolling all or portions of the 875-mile interstate highway system in Wisconsin. For more than a decade, Wisconsin's transportation policy has failed to address the impending decline in revenue from per gallon gasoline and diesel taxes. It was not until 2018 and 2019 that the state began to hold electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles somewhat accountable, imposing a flat annual surcharge on both. Any switchover from fuel taxes to something else will by necessity be gradual, the planning for which needs to happen now. With regard to highway funding, Wisconsin is in great shape to improve state infrastructure by taking advantage of the federal bipartisan infrastructure law. Based on highway funding formulas, Wisconsin could expect to receive approximately $1.1 billion in new funding over 5 years, an increase of about 25%. In addition, Wisconsin will receive an estimated $225 million for bridge replacement and repairs under the BIL over the next 5 years. However, after decades of disinvestment, there are considerable unmet needs in our state. While Wisconsin DOT will direct BIL funding, now that is something I could get behind. Well, the Wisconsin DOT, you can tell the highway is not my world. The Wisconsin DOT will direct BIL funding where it is most needed in high priority state and local highway and bridge projects. It is our request that smaller counties and municipalities not be left out of the planning and the funding. A total of 45% of Wisconsin major roads are in poor or mediocre condition. Driving on deteriorated roads costs Wisconsin motorists $3.1 billion a year, $733 per driver, in the form of additional repairs, accelerated vehicle depreciation, and increased fuel consumption and tire wear. Surface Transportation Program, STP, Local Bridge Improvement Assistance, and the Local Road Improvement Program, LRIP, funding remains a critical part of our Dunn County's ability to address highway and bridge needs. While significant federal BIL funding flows into Wisconsin's system, continued attention to traditional highway and bridge funding sources must not be diminished or lost. And with that, we have reached the conclusion of our presentations for you. So in no particular order of importance, but however, so we do not forget Senator Smith online, I would now invite comments, and we can start questions and comments, and we can start with Senator Smith.
I knew that was going to be my punishment for online. But to tell you the truth, it's helpful that I can be online, and I appreciate that today. I had the other places around my district, and to not have to come all the way back to Menominee would be nice. So I'm going to kind of go through. And that's the other thing. I have this in front of me. I can scroll through. So I'm going to scroll through a little bit and just make a few comments on some of the things here. Most of this is not news to most of us attending here. And it's unfortunate that we continue to struggle, in my view, with funding, especially counties who are supposedly administering our priorities as a state. That's what counties are for. Counties are, as I keep hearing from, the argument is, well, counties can't be making such changes because they are just an arm of the state and they need to follow the state. Well, there isn't a better example of unfunded mandates than counties. And when we as a legislature pass things that we expect the counties to do, and then we don't provide your proper funding. So including, of course, judicial, which is a huge issue these days. And because we've seen more and more courts are slowing down. There aren't enough DAs to be able to keep things moving. Assistant DAs, and it's county after county are making these requests. Now, I'm assuming that the request here for $5 million increase in GPR is for a statewide request of 5 million, right? Not, or is that county? Didn't say.
Statewide.
Statewide, yeah. Okay. You know, and considering we've got a $7 billion surplus we're looking at these days, you guys are being awful nice about your requests. But we certainly should do that. It shouldn't be. Much of these things should not be a really difficult thing as far as politically for us to do. We should agree on that. Those are necessary items. And then in land use, same thing here with I would go back to and I noticed Tom, you didn't mention PFAS, but in some ways you did with the groundwater testing and assessment that we should be doing. We made that request, of course, for funding so that all municipalities, including counties, of course, have the funding available to test all wells for PFAS, for instance. And so it bothers me to some degree that we can't do that when we know how this has become such a serious issue. And it isn't just in the places that have the ability to test. That's not just the only places where PFAS is, it's everywhere. And we should have the ability we should be testing everywhere so that people know what they're getting, what's in their well, and then provide the resources to fix the problem and to stop it from getting into the ground to begin with. So that's a really big issue, of course, but supporting our farmers as well when it comes to land use is really important. There's nobody in this world who understand the soils and want to protect the soils and the water more than farmers. I actually do believe that. But unfortunately, CAFOs oftentimes give farmers a black eye because they aren't necessarily, when they are long distance franchise type of operations with too much going on, too much manure being spread, that can be a serious problem to all of us. And I live in a town myself, and that's a great concern for us. But we certainly need to do a lot of those things there. And I wanted to actually hit with Health and Human Services, and Diane, you mentioned a couple things here, but you could really tie the nursing educators. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was the nursing. I was going to go on to nursing homes, but before I do that, the Health and Human Services, Diane, we were talking about Medicaid expansion. Absolutely, we have to have Medicaid expansion, accepting that $1.6 billion. I mean, it doesn't even make sense anymore. It became a political football that has caused a lot of serious issues with a lot of people in this state. And there's no excuse that we are not accepting that money and moving forward and providing the services that what you, again, as a county, are expected to provide, and including mental health. And thank goodness, I'm glad the governor declared this year to be the year of mental health services, and hopefully we all take that very seriously, and we get the joint finance and the budget that it is a centerpiece of the things that we do when it comes, for instance, to even education in our kids and providing the services in our schools so that kids have the access to the services for their own issues that they are having with mental health. And the county veteran services officers, that was an interesting point, Diane. I didn't realize that the feds have never actually funded this before, and that seems awfully strange, doesn't it? But so good for you to advocate with our federal officials to ask for that funding. I think that's a good idea. And I'll go back, going back to nursing homes is where I wanted to go with this, but it is, you can just certified, this nursing and certified nursing assistant that we do need more of, but also the nursing programs in all the UW system schools. Those two issues are tied together by the fact that we have a nursing educator shortage. The reason we have a nursing educator shortage is because we don't match the monies that they can make going elsewhere and doing things outside of actually becoming educators. They have to, what they have to go through to get their PhD, their doctorate to be a nursing educator, to cost them money. But just the fact that they are not paid at the same level as the professionals where they can go onto a medical facility and get paid. We need to be able to understand that the payback, I think, as you're pointing out, the payback of paying them adequate salaries and retaining them so that they can educate our next generation of nursing assistants and nurses is going to be vitally important for all of us as we all grow older, particularly. And so we can't even talk about moving more UW system schools into nursing when we can't even fill the positions we have in the schools that we have already. So those two things are really linked, because we have got to pay properly the nursing educators and get them into those schools. And Jim, I got to say, broadband expansion is a big deal to me. I think I have year after year, session after session, been introducing a package of bills to promote broadband expansion, because I live by the words where no one's connected until everybody's connected. And that is absolutely the truth in today's world. So we have to get fiber to every household and every business in the state, and we can do that. We have the ability, we have the funds to do that, and it has to be taken on just like, and I know everybody's heard this a million times, it's just like electrification, and it has to be a public-private investment. And because it's not typically, it's actually not even fair to expect that our private companies are going to go into debt trying to reach places they can't make money reaching. It's up to us as to make broadband a public service in some degrees, that everybody has that fiber, and then go from there. But we have to have that. It affects education, it affects our economy, and it affects our healthcare going forward, as now we can do so much for healthcare as well. And when we get to the levy limits, Gary, I've been preaching since I was a town chair. What business does the state legislators have placing such heavy limits on local elected officials, elected by the same people that elect us in the legislature, to not be able to make the decisions needed to provide the services that our neighbors and our friends expect from us in our own towns and county. So you heard from the governor that, which is actually seems to be coming from a lot of different places, but he said it in a different way, but taking 20% of our sales tax, which would be 1% of sales tax, to turning it into back to the well, shoot, what do I shared revenue for the community, for the municipalities. That has to happen, or is one, I should say that's one idea that could work. But no matter what, we have to either raise the revenue limits or eliminate, as far as I'm concerned, eliminate that revenue limits and let our democracy work as it's supposed to work, and let people decide what they will and will not afford to pay for. And roads and highways, as Governor Evers said, fix the damn roads. And that's been a priority over the last 4 years with our governor. He's moved a lot of money into fixing our roads. It's moving quite well. And you've talked about this is just facts. And it's too bad in 2005, our legislators gave in to the automatic gas tax increases to stop those. And here we are frozen at the 2005-06 levels. But you also pointed out that we have to move in a different direction anyway now with the increased level of mileage and going to electric vehicles. And we have to come up with some real solutions. And I'm hoping that we are able to do that together as legislators and as professionals throughout this country who know they have to have the roads to move the economy, to move their goods, and of course, to move with tourism. And by the way, tourism came up here too. Jim mentioned that. I am on the tourism board, and that's a big deal to me. And you're absolutely right, Jim. Tourism is such a taken for granted in Wisconsin, but we do not invest in our tourism nearly as much as all other states around us. We are getting beat badly by the marketing of other states around us in the ways of tourism. I think we take for granted that people love to come to Wisconsin and spend their money, but we are not doing enough to encourage them to do that. So those are my points I want to make. I probably talked too long, but thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Smith. And I would point out that the $5 million in funding is actually from the child support agencies, and the district attorney's request doesn't have a dollar amount attached to it. It's asking for across the board raise of the entry level so that it can be more attractive to become an assistant district attorney. So I will just take you kind of in the order that I see you. If you'd like to come forward, Representative Moses.
Well, it's great to know we don't have time limits, Senator Smith. That's awesome. So, and I was doing great until the county manager here mentioned BLTs, because it's been a long day since I had lunch. But for those of you I haven't met, I'm Representative Moses, proud to be the only representative in the legislature from Dunn County. I've lived here my whole life, so I think I'm the most familiar with what's going on. Many of you I've talked to, many of you I actually talk to on a regular basis. If you don't have my cell phone now, get out your pen and paper. It is 715-505-2294. If I don't answer right away, it's either because I'm busy, I'm in my business treating patients, or I'm doing things with my kids, or I don't like you. Jim, maybe. Well, I'll call you back though, even if it is Jim, but not to single anyone out, but certainly it's my honor to represent Dunn County, St. Croix, and a little corner of Polk in the state legislature. I stay pretty busy down there as well. Obviously, had a 20-year history background working in healthcare as a chiropractor locally. So I'm quite honored to be the new chairman of the Health, Aging, and Long-Term Care. So a lot of the things, in fact, that was the longest sheet that we had was on health and human service related stuff. So look forward to working with each of you. Like I said, certainly feel free to reach out at any time and I'll keep to my time limit. So thank you for having us tonight.
Senator James.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us here. It's a pleasure to be here, and unfortunately, I do not live in Dunn County. Then can have that glory tonight. I live in Eau Claire County. I'm from Altoona. I took over Kathy Bonier's senatorial position in 23rd Senate District, covering 8 counties now. I did 4 years as a state representative, 2 terms in the state legislature, and then decided to move on up to the big house, to the upper house in the Capitol, and just being about a month in, there is a big difference between a representative and a senator, just so you all realize that it is 2 different worlds, and there is a learning process that I'm still going through. We did get our budget buddies now. So I do have a budget buddy, and our areas are like DOC, which will probably encompass the ADAs and pay raises and the issues going on in our state prison system, the DNR issues, and some other things. But my primary passion, which, as I'm sure as the county and corp council is present here, being the brand new chair of the mental health, substance abuse, substance use and prevention, and children and families committee in the Senate. This is the first time in Wisconsin's history that they've had this committee. And in the assembly, they've also combined mental health and substance use and prevention as well, because this is where I get some glory. Being the only active law enforcement officer in our state capital, I take pride in that. Because not only as a father and not only as a grandfather, but as a cop and as a legislator, I see the impacts of mental health throughout our communities. Being a cop, if we can address the issues that where people are in mental health crisis, and the quicker that we get them the services, the less likely they're going to go and abuse any type of substance, the less likely they're going to do anything to harm or abandon their families or make choices because of the addiction to do so. And we have to keep our children and families together, because we know the absorbent costs that it takes once we remove a child from that family. And we just did the family first preventative services presentation last Thursday in our Capitol. So we can save money, and there's ways to do it. So I'm looking forward to being a part of that discussion, and it's all encompassing. It's all encompassing and total big picture. And I know that it'll save a lot of dollars that impact our county governments if we can do something better in our state to address those issues. And that's what I'm going to take pride on. That's going to be my number 1 focus. Chapter 51's the medical clearance process. I see some smiles because they get it. They know what's costing our agencies and the impacts that it has on our counties. So I'm going to be extremely excited. And if it takes the full 4 years, well, if it goes beyond that, then I might have to run again and do another 4. So that is the ultimate goal, because I know we can do better as a state, and that's what I'm looking forward to. And where the conversations, the meetings have already started. And yeah, so it was a joint thing. It's not only the governor declaring the year of mental health, but the legislature also took the actions in forming these committees prior to the governor being able to say it's the year of mental health. So I think collectively we'll be able to do something together on that. How many of y'all want my cell phone number? If you're ever in Chippewa County, dial 911, I'll be there. So thank you all very much.
Representative Summerfield. Wish to join us?
Yeah, once again, thank everybody for being here. I think I've been here since 2017, so this is probably 6th one. There's a couple of them with COVID, which was a little more interesting. But this is a great group to have the dialogue going back and forth, knowing that maybe potentially we're not going to agree on every issue, but I think there's a lot of work we can agree on. And this is where, you know, coming down to this, where Jesse, you know, was talking about mental health, Clint being on the health. You know, those are, you know, two, I think, biggest, you know, really cost in the state of Wisconsin, especially to the counties. That's what moving forward, you know, with the potential. I said last week at the Towns Association, I am very optimistic about the shared revenue and all that coming out. And as soon as I say I'm optimistic, 3 months later, it kicks me in the butt. But I truly, really think with the counties, the towns, the League of Municipalities, our colleagues that have been working into it to hopefully make some transformational changes on the way we fund local government. So I wish we could have more details onto it, but I think this is something where we're being very wary of the taxpayers, making sure we're spending tax dollars wisely, but making sure that it's going in the right areas, and especially that it's not going just to Madison, Milwaukee, going into rural areas, especially, you know, to the towns, you know, for our roads, our infrastructure on that. So I think in the next couple of months, with this, you know, all the resolutions out here, you're asking us continue to completely be engaged with all of us that are here presently, because that's what happens. Our budgets, you know, it's going to be happening, hopefully be passed out by the end of June. Hopefully the governor will sign it, and that's our 2-year spending or funding for the state, and a lot of it does come down to the counties. With that, I always have to put a plug in for broadband, since I was the chair of the Assembly Broadband Committee last session. Now I moved up into leadership, so I don't get a committee, but I am still the point person in the Assembly for broadband. So continuing, if you got local townships they're looking for expansions, please let me know. In the current round of funding for the broadband grant program, I think there's about 20 million left. We're still trying to see if the governor's going to put more of the ARPA funding into it to get the broadband out there. Fortunately, we'll see when the feds actually come out with the BEAD funding. I was hoping that we would be hearing about it in March, but now it's not looking till the fall. So, I mean, it does give you time, which I know a lot of your townships that you represent have already been working on it, and even at the countywide level, but continuing thinking on how we can get, you know, all groups. I've seen it work very well, especially in the Colfax area, Elk Mound, with Bloomer Telephone, partnering with the school districts, the townships, to get, you know, more money flowing to it. So continue to be working. Feel free to reach out to me on the broadband, because I think it's very important. And also with the broadband, I also say, if you got, you know, I'm just thinking parts of Dunn County, looking in the Starlink into the satellite broadband. I know there's some areas that it works very well, but there's other areas that it's not. So, you know, this is one thing on the broadband, pure fiber in the ground, it's not going to solve the whole issue. Just, I mean, you can look the ravines and stuff in Hay River, Otter Creek, and, you know, et cetera. It's hard to get fiber, you know, up and down there. So looking at other technologies that are out there. So continuing to reach out to me. I know some of you have already reached out to me in the past on the broadband issue. Feel free to give my office a call, and I can help you lose some of my knowledge and see, hey, this is what worked over in Cornell. Maybe work over here in, you know, Township of Tanner. So once again, thank everybody for attending today.
All right. And last, we will hear from Senator Stafschold.
All right. Well, I'd like to echo that as well too. I think this meeting, you know, I go to quite a few of these, and a lot of time the legislative update is all of us talking for just a couple of minutes about what's on our plate or what's on our agenda. And to have you guys interact with a presentation of the things that are important to this county, it really matters, and it gives me some notes. I actually have some questions here. I will follow up. There'll be a homework assignment for some of you, but yeah, we have a few things to go over. Increase in ADAs. That's pretty self-explanatory. We talk about community safety and keeping criminals not habitually going through the system. That's important to make sure that the system works. So we support that. Under the land use, I have some questions about that too, but I'll send that directly. Nursing homes, I think none of us have probably not heard that. I guess one of the questions I have is the increases we did just on Friday. I was in Hudson at Christian Comfort Homes, and they have 2 facilities which increased their Medicaid dollars by, I think one was 33%, one was 26%. So I'm interested to see how that compares to here in Dunn County, what the increases were there. The other thing I guess I had a question about, and I don't know if I can ask questions or not, but if we increase funding to the nursing programs at the colleges, I guess I'm wondering how increased funding to the colleges helps the shortages that we're seeing in the field, I guess is a question I have. I don't know if we want to answer that now or.
I believe that Senator Smith, I think, spoke to that, correct?
I think he covered it all, to be honest with
I
you.
think in the sense. I think in the sense of the fact that you have to be able to pay those educators well enough in order to be attracted to the teaching profession instead of other areas in nursing with your PhD that you can make more money.
Good. You're talking about agricultural tourism. That's right near and dear to my heart as a crop farmer up in Aaron Prairie Township. So I actually talked with some gentlemen up in Polk County last year. It's the northern part of my district now. It was the center part last year, but we have something, and I guess I'm interested to see what the zoning is here in Dunn County. They have zoning issues on what constitutes a campground. And they have an idea, and I have a bill drafted to try to affect that, to allow camping for, it's kind of up and it's a little bit fluid now, but camping for up to 3 nights and 3 occurrences across the year. And the idea is you would get perhaps people from the Twin Cities that don't get that experience to come out, actually camp on a farm, help with chores in the morning, do dairy farm, maybe go to town, go to the vineyards, go out to eat, do whatever, that kind of tourism idea. And I guess the question I have is they have an issue with zoning in Polk County that doesn't allow that. And it'd be interesting to see if that's an issue here in Dunn County too. Transportation, I guess, is the last thing I really want to hit on. One of the things that's the most surprising to me when I got to Madison was, we all know that there's a divide between somebody with an R behind their name and somebody with a D. And that's oftentimes the battle in the capital. However, one thing that I was surprised about is in a bipartisan manner, there's often a rural versus urban fight in the capital. And these guys are all shaking their head because they know one of the biggest damn fights that we have is not to fund an additional mega project in some urban area somewhere so that Dunn County Highway gets their funding, so that the townships get their funding. You know, the town of Sherman needs more funding. Those dollars oftentimes are sent to the southeast part of the state or the south or the east part. And we battle in a bipartisan manner. I'll give credit to all sides. We fight in an urban versus a rural area to make sure that our fair share comes back here. And we'd like to continue to do that. You guys have great ideas on some ways to do that, but at the end of the day, during the JFC projects and the appropriations, we make sure that we try to get our fair share of dollars back here. So with that, thank you.
All right. I would like to thank you, Senator Stafford, Senator James, Senator Smith, Representative Moses, Representative Sommerfeld, not just on behalf of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors, but on behalf of the county and personally. And I was really excited to see how obviously engaged you are, taking notes. That makes me very excited. I really appreciate you being here and taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to us and talk with us. And with that, do we have any questions? I think Supervisor Larry Burek.
Well, I'll ask a question and only because people ask me all the time. Why do elections have to cost so much money? And why do elections have to cost so much money? And I mean, does the legislature ever sit down and think or discuss how much outside funding from the state, from someplace other than the state of Wisconsin comes into each particular district? I mean, don't you think we look a little embarrassing, the amount of millions of dollars that are spent on a governor's race? If I read everything that comes in my mailbox, and why does elections have to cost so much money? So that's not very deep, but
I think that one's largely a First Amendment issue. It is the system we are stuck with. Anyone else? All right, thanks again so much for coming. We are adjourned. Oh, what? Oh, Supervisor Lino.
Yes, this is addressed to our representatives of this particular time. What I'd like to say more than anything else is the funding for our district attorneys, our prosecutors across the state of Wisconsin. I heard something very disturbing that the district attorney in Rock County left, basically hit the road. And, you know, when you're looking at funding for their programs, I think it's really, really important that we take the time, think about it, because justice delayed is justice denied. And that's all I've got to say. And so that funding really needs to happen. That's all. I'm done.
Thank you, Supervisor Lino. Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.